Hi everyone, Pollywog here, and I am going to be showing you a mini lesson called clay sculptures. So in your kit, you've got some air dry clay, you've got a little lump of just white air dry clay, and then you've got two different colors of air dry clay. And I'm just going to be working with really itty bitty little pieces of the colored air dry clay, but you have about twice as big for each of your colors. So what I've got with me here is a tray to work on. I decided to get out a rolling pin and then a rolling pin that has a different texture just for fun. And then also what the last thing was that's in your kit is this little wooden dowel. And this is what we're going to use as our tool for working with our clay. Now, if you have clay tools at home or Play-Doh tools at home, you are absolutely welcome to use those. We're really just going to be making sculptures, and there's no wrong way to make something out of clay. There's a lot of different techniques you can use for working with clay, but I'm just going to show you a few really simple things that I'll do with my air dry clay, and hopefully it will inspire you, but you can really make anything that you would like out of your air dry clay. So I really hope you have fun with this project and get really creative, because there are so many different things that you can build with air dry clay. Now, before I move my camera and get started, I just want to let you know that because it is air dry clay, you don't have to bake it. It will just dry overnight by the air. That's why it's called air dry clay. But you will need to leave it alone to dry. So typically it takes about 24 hours for air dry clay to fully harden. So I like to do mine during the day and then set it aside and leave it all the way overnight until it can be nice and dry and hardened. Now, when it's hardened, it doesn't mean that it's gonna just stay that way forever. It is really fragile. So if you drop it, it would probably break. I just want to give you all those warnings before we get started, because sometimes people will create really amazing things out of their clay and then they play with it and then it breaks. So I just want to warn you, you can totally play with whatever you make. You just want to remember that it is fragile. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and show you what I'm doing down here and we'll get started. All right, so you can see that I've got my tray, I've got my little wooden dowel, I've got all my clay, and I've also got a rolling pin here. So I'm just going to start out by rolling out my clay to see how much I'm working with. You can see as I'm rolling it out, it's getting a lot bigger from that little clump that I had it in. So even though it looked like you might not have had a lot of clay in your kit, this is actually a really good amount of clay to work with to make some sort of little sculpture. Now, making a sculpture can really be anything you want. You can make a little tower, you can make a little building, a little house, you can make a person, you can make some sort of an object like an egg. If you did my last mini lesson, make your own dragon egg, we worked with the same type of air dry clay. So you can make so many different kinds of things out of air dry clay. Today, I think I'm going to do two different things. So I'm going to just take my dowel and split mine in half. And then I'm going to take this piece and just get it out of my way. Now I'm going to take this piece, and using my dowel, I'm just going to help lift it up a little bit. After you roll it down, the reason it's good to have a tray is because it tends to stick to the surface that you're using. So having a tray is nice because I don't mind if the tray gets really messy. All right, so I'm just going to take my piece of air dry clay and set it off to the side nice and flattened. And then I'm going to work on flattening my other two pieces. Because again, same thing, even though it looks like just a really small amount, it's actually a really decent amount of air dry clay. All right, I've got some red over here. Get my green going. And I'm going to make a little person. So I'm just going to break off a piece of my air dry clay, and I'm just going to use my hands to roll it into a little ball. And now I don't want all the lines that are going to be on it from rolling it on my hand, so now I'm just going to take it and roll it on my tray. You can see I'm starting to get a nice little round shape here. So I'm using my thumb just to flatten it down and kind of shape it to look a little more like a head. I'm going to use my dowel and poke 2 spots where eyes should be. Going to take my dowel and make a little nose. Now, you can see that I've made an indentation marks. So that means I've pressed into the clay hard enough that you can now see where my dowel pressed in, the nose and the 2 eyes. Doing that will actually make it stay that way when it dries. So any indentation you make like this will still be there when your clay dries. This is nice because if I decide to go back and paint it later, it's already ready for me to do that. Just making a little mouth. You can use this little dowel in different ways. You can use it to smooth over things that you didn't like. So you can see I just smoothed over my whole face. You can use it to poke stuff, just like I was doing right there. You can even use it as a little mini rolling pin if you don't have one of your own. You can use it pretty much any way that you need to. Just keep in mind that this edge is a little pokey, so you want to be careful when you're using it. So I'm going to go ahead and turn my person into a snowman. So I've got 1 ball. I'm going to make another one. I know it's still a little early for snowmen, but I really like snowmen, so I'm going to make one. Now these air dry clays do stick together, but it's really easy to pull them apart. So I am going to really make sure I get it the way I want it to be on top of this one, and then I'm going to squish it down just a little bit. Now that might not stay, and it might be safer to glue that. If I really want those 2 pieces to stay together, putting a little dab of hot glue underneath would be a good way to make sure that happens. Just going to do one last spot for him. All right. He does look a little uneven, so I'm going to take a little bit from this middle section, roll it back out, and then add it to my bottom section, just so he's a little more even with his 3 sections of body. You can also do pinching pots using this air dry clay. After I do this snowman, I'll show you how you do that. So that's a little snowman, and then I can use all my extra parts to make little accessories for him if I want. I'm going to try and attempt to give him a little bow tie. Now he's wearing a little bow tie. All right, so if I want to do a pinch pot, I'm going to get my air dry clay all together, and then using my fingers, I'm just going to start pinching the clay until it forms into a little tray or a little dish or a little bowl. Now I've got a little bit of baking soda down if you've noticed that I've been messing with this substance that's on top of my tray. That's just baking soda. I put it there so that my clay wouldn't just stick down. You can also use flour. You don't want to use a lot though. You don't want to dry your clay out. So pinch pots, you just pinch and smooth, and you can even use your dowel for this piece. Just pinch in until it's a nice little tray like you want it to look. You can even push in your edges to make them look a little like a scalloped edge, which means it's kind of like a little frill. You can use something round to stick inside of it to really make it a nice round surface. There's pretty much no wrong way to do clay. So you can see that I've done tons of little random things with my clay. You could mix your clays together. You could keep the colors separate. You could make 2 or 3 different things out of your clay. I mixed these 2 colors together and now it looks really cool. So there's a lot you can do with air dry clay. Here's an example of a little pinch pot that I made when it's nice and dry. I did add a little food coloring to the clay so you can see that it's a little colored. I did that when the clay was still wet, so that's why it looks nice and marbled. If you want to make your clay colored, you can do that technique, or you can wait until it's dry and then paint it. But now I have this nice little air dry clay hardened little pinch pot, and I didn't really care too much about my rough edges, and I kind of like the way it looks, how it's not perfect, and it would make a nice little dish for maybe some jewelry or some little thumbtacks or something small that would fit inside of here. And you can hear it's nice and hardened. So if I were to drop this, it could break. If I were to try and pull it apart really hard, it would break. But it's nice and firm now, so if I tried to like change the shape of it, I can't. So that's what will happen to yours when you set your sculpture aside for it to harden. All right, everyone, that's it for me. Clay sculptures are super easy. There's no wrong way to do it. So instead of showing you an exact way to make something specific, I want you to be super creative and make anything that you want yourself. If you really like what you create, ask your parent to post it in our Current Families Facebook page. All right, everyone, I'll see you guys next time. Enjoy this mini lesson.